A major shockwave for Australian radio. ARN Media's ambitious $200 million investment in top duo Kyle and Jackie O collapsing, raising questions about the future of the network, but also sparking hope among some remaining staff. For more, we're joined by Darren Woolley from Trinity P3. Well, what were your thoughts?
Ahron, it's a big news story when it gets covered by the ABC's 7:30 report as well as every other media outlet. So clearly, you know, this is a big shock for the industry because ARN were betting, as you said, $200 million on being able to make this high-rating Sydney duo work nationally, and clearly it hasn't worked.
It certainly hasn't, particularly in the Melbourne market. I mean, is it a case of just asking for too much money and then it didn't work?
Well, look, obviously they thought that the ARN thought the economics stacked up if it did work nationally. But the other problem they've got here is, apart from Melbourne not working, is that the advertising industry is also in a bit of a slowdown at the moment. We've seen figures come out recently that the second half of last year and the first month of this year, advertising spend's down. You've also got to understand that advertisers are getting increasingly cautious about where their advertising appears, where their brand appears. And Kyle and Jackie O, while they were high rating in Sydney, the content would often be inappropriate for many of the brands that would be advertising with them. And you can't be seen to supporting misogyny, profanity, and basically sexism.
It's this fascinating aspect that is happening in the media at the moment where to get more views, you have to constantly shock the audience. We see it with some news channels, we see it on social media as well. But the problem is brands want safety. So you can rate 1 billion people, but if you offend the brands, you don't make any money out of it, am I right?
Except that there's a double standard here, Ahron, and that is that online there is no standard. I mean, there is, you know, the Broadcasting Act covers radio and television, but it doesn't really cover the appropriateness of the content online. You know, and we've seen Facebook and Google, you know, YouTube, and many of the others of these advertising platforms are getting away with not really controlling the content, but advertisers, as we've seen, every year are putting more and more money into those platforms where there's very little safety. I mean, it's not that long ago that Facebook allowed live streaming from a mass shooting in New Zealand. To run.
It's a really interesting point you say there, you raise there, because I know people who have tried to advertise on a TV news channel that I will not name the name of and were chased down by MFW, which is Mad Witches, and you can imagine what the F stands for. They then went and advertised on that news channel's YouTube page and MFW didn't notice. Is the onus on the platforms, or essentially the cancel culture and the cancellation organisations out there? They seem to be focusing on traditional advertisers and traditional media.
Well, here's the thing, is that broadcast to many, many people all at once. Whereas in a digital world, that content only appears if you go looking for it. And so, you know, while it does get huge reach, it's not happening at one time. So it's very easy for these groups to be able to target a broadcaster, because you can't deny that at this particular time this ad or this piece of content went to air. Whereas, you know, tracking it down on these digital platforms, they're able to hide and play hide and seek. And yet you go looking for it, it's very easy to find. And I think this is the thing, is that the government has not kept up with the technology, in that, you know, we should be saying to the platforms, if you want advertising dollars, you need to start doing something about this content. They say they do, but it's largely lip service.
Yeah, all right. Let's actually have a listen to what happened. Just this short clip of what actually kicked off the Kyle and Jackie O storm.
You're off with the fairies with
Tell me where, you know,
be aware of what's really going on.
I am, Kyle. That I totally am offended.
All right, they've had Barneys before. I mean, they've been together for 20 odd years. And if you think about all of the controversies that they have endured and survived through, Horoscopes was the one that brought them down. Horoscopes was the hill to die on when you're talking about $200 million. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and to use a tired old metaphor, or idiom, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. All the reports are now saying that this relationship's been falling apart for months. And I think the pressure on them, the $200 million, the $20 million a year, the need to make Melbourne or Victoria work and it not working, put a huge amount of pressure on this relationship, this working relationship, and it hasn't survived. It's been falling to bits for, in some cases, people say it's years. They've also, as individuals, gone, they're very different life stages. Kyle used to be the single man about town, and Jackie was the sort of more sensible middle of the road person, and that's also changed. Kyle's now a father, and Jackie is now, let's say, a single woman enjoying life to its full. These are all things. The real question is, that actual meltdown isn't as bad as a lot of the content that they've been spewing out.
Well, that's my point. Yeah, that's why I'm surprised that it's this one that is the reason why it all came to an end. Look, what I will say, Darren, is in 26 years' time, when you and I are still here doing this segment together, if we're on $100 million each, you can read the horoscopes and I will not have a go at you, because that's equality. Speaking of which, new data from Workplace Gender Equality Agency revealing Australia's advertising and media industry still face significant gender pay gaps, with disparities reaching as high as 26%, prompting calls for stronger action from corporate leadership. I think we all think about the bust up between Lisa Wilkinson and Channel 9 over Carl's pay there as well. Talk to us about, I guess, some of the main findings, the latest report, the data regarding gender pay gaps.
Look, and I think this is a terrific initiative, even though there's a lot of criticism, particularly from men saying it's not a really fair comparison, but particularly in the media industry, where many of the people are women. It overrepresents women as employees, and yet they're the ones that continue to get paid just a fraction in the dollar of their male counterparts. It's interesting. We've had some highlights, which probably unsurprising, ARN Media and Mamamia, high number of women employed by those media outlets, but also very closed gap between men and women. In fact, in some cases, a positive gap in favour of women. But this is the issue, is that when we've got an industry that has a high level of women involved in it, women participation, why isn't there more work being done to actually close that gap? Why do we continue to have this issue, which is somehow men are worth more for doing a job than women are? And I think that's the question that shareholders and also the industry itself should be asking. This is not a once-a-year thing. This is a 365-day issue that needs to be addressed. That's without even going to the advertising agencies, which also are facing their own struggles financially, but also they're not closing the gap in most cases.
Yeah, it's interesting having a look at this chart here of the different Australian media companies, the top performers there. Now, Paramount's interesting, 7.6% gender pay gap. They've got Beverly McGarvey, who has made a real point. They're doing a TV Women's Day event they've been promoting, but also you think about how all of the capital city newsreaders for Channel 10 are female. You think about Julia Morris being the standout performer on I'm a Celebrity. A lot of females in senior roles, even the new Hot Seat reboot there too. But we are obviously not just talking about the big names in front of the camera, we're talking about the people behind the camera too.
And that's the point. It's the large level of participation that needs to be represented. Lisa Wilkinson, very high profile, but behind Lisa is a large number of women that are not on air that are being underpaid for the work. And I think you've used that as a good example, because at Paramount, you've got a top-down approach that's really keeping it on the agenda. I think, boards should be, of the other media companies, should be looking around the table and saying, what more can we do to close this gap? Because when our employment, our workforce is substantially female, we should be looking after them. And this gap closure is not just for women, it's for men as well. In many families, there's two incomes, and being able to close that gap, I think, is really important. I did see an interesting concept, which is flip flip the whole relationship and say, if a company wants to save money, and we're hearing a lot of that, why don't they just reduce the men's salaries down to where the women are now, and that way they'll save money? I don't think you'll see a lot of males voting for them.
Yeah. All right, better leave it there. Always appreciate your insights. Darren Woolley, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.